In 2002, deep in the sweltering Cerrejón coal mine of Colombia, a team of paleontologists sifted through layers of compressed rock. They were excavating the remains of a rainforest from the Paleocene era, sealed by a sudden burial under mud and volcanic ash. Yes, I am talking about an ancient rainforest from about 60 million years ago, right after the age of dinosaurs ended. So, in this extremely mysterious place, it was possible to encounter everything: leaves preserved with striking detail, fish frozen while swimming, turtles captured in their final moments. As the team continued their investigations, and while everything seemed completely normal, one day, dozens of different thoracic vertebrae and rib bones were found during these excavations. At first, the scientists did what any reasonable paleontologist would do when encountering huge fossil bones in tropical Paleocene deposits. They assumed crocodilian. After all, crocodiles were the giants of those ancient swamps. The idea of a reptile the size of a truck already felt like pushing credibility to its absolute limit. After many days had passed, the number of bones discovered reached 186, and the most recently found bones were much larger and thicker compared to the earlier ones, thicker than a human wrist. When paleontologists decided to re-examine the bones from scratch, they saw that the bones were too large to belong to a crocodile. Even more interestingly, the structure of the bones did not match typical known crocodile vertebrae. This led paleontologists to consider that the bones might instead belong to a snake.
That is the world's largest snake, John.
However, the discovered bones were too large to be from a snake either. So what in the world were these bones? 7 years had passed since the first bones were found, meaning the year was now 2009. For years, the mystery of which species the bones from the Cerrejón coal mines belonged to remained unsolved. These bones were so unique that they resembled no vertebrae ever found before. Everyone was aware of it. A new discovery was being born. In their excitement over this new find, the paleontologists may have overdone the examination a bit, because years later they proposed an even more astonishing idea: the idea of a giant snake. These extraordinary fossils were later transferred to the Florida Museum of Natural History, where they were studied and described by an international team. Yes, the fossils were officially identified as the remains of a snake species. According to the description, these bones belong to a new species of giant boyd snake, and they were given the name Titanoboa cerrejonensis, derived from the Greek word titan. By 2011, during another expedition to Cerrejón, more fossils of Titanoboa were found. Most importantly, the team returned with 3 fragmented skulls of Titanoboa, making it one of the few fossil snakes with preserved cranial material. Thus, Titanoboa entered the records as the largest snake ever known to have lived, an animal so impossibly massive that it instantly reset the upper boundary of what scientists believed a snake could be. To explain this better, I think I need to make a comparison. In the left image, you see a Titanoboa vertebra. In the right image, there's a vertebra of a modern anaconda. The size difference is truly incredible. The vertebrae of Titanoboa were as large as those of a modern whale. And here's what makes this discovery so unsettling. Titanoboa wasn't just abnormally large. It was a biological impossibility that somehow became real. A creature that could only exist under conditions so extreme, so alien to our modern world, that its very existence tells us something profound about the limits of life itself. News of the discovery hit the scientific community like a thunderclap. When researchers first measured the vertebrae, they ran calculations again and again, absolutely convinced the numbers had to be wrong. But they weren't wrong. The measurements pointed to a snake exceeding 15 meters in length. Some estimates pushed even higher. Researchers were genuinely stunned. If these numbers held up under scrutiny, Titanoboa wasn't merely a big snake. It was the largest terrestrial predator on Earth in the immediate aftermath of the dinosaur extinction. Its size implied something even more shocking. Paleocene ecosystems must have been far hotter, far denser, and far more competitive than scientists had previously imagined. A creature this massive could only exist in a world pushing biology to its absolute limits. Titanoboa was absurdly, impossibly large. The most conservative estimates place it at approximately 42 feet long, though some calculations reach beyond 50 feet. Weight estimates range between 2,000 and 2,500 pounds, making it heavier than most compact cars. For context, the largest anaconda ever reliably measured stretched about 28 feet and weighed around 500 pounds. Titanoboa was nearly twice as long and 4 to 5 times heavier. That's not just bigger, that's a completely different category of animal operating under completely different biological rules. But here's what I find genuinely fascinating. How do scientists even calculate the size of an extinct animal from a handful of vertebrae? If you've made it this far into the video, you can pay your respects to the Titanoboa by leaving a snake emoji in the comments, or you can support me directly by subscribing. Modern snakes follow remarkably predictable scaling laws. Vertebral size correlates directly with total body length through mathematical relationships that hold across species. Paleontologists measure a Titanoboa vertebra compared to modern constrictors like boas and anacondas and extrapolate backward using these established ratios. Indeed, when calculating Titanoboa's size, Head and his colleagues used exactly this method, making highly logical projections the team based on comparisons between well-preserved Titanoboa vertebrae and the skeletons of modern boa snakes, found that they fit into a position along the ventral series of the vertebral column toward the precloacal region, corresponding to approximately 65% of the spine. Using this method, the initial size estimates suggested a length of about 42 feet. Titanoboa's mass was also determined using the same method. It was estimated by comparison with extant green anacondas and southern rock pythons, resulting in an average of 2,000 pounds. However, after the discovery of the skull, Titanoboa grew even longer. This allowed for size estimates based on skull to body length ratios. Applying anaconda proportions to Titanoboa's 16-inch skull revealed that its total body length was actually about 47 feet. Consequently, Titanoboa's weight also needed to be updated. In 2016, Feldman and colleagues, based on the equation they used to estimate body size in boids, estimated that an individual measuring 47 feet would have a maximum weight of 2,500 pounds. These estimates far surpass not only the largest modern snakes, the green anaconda and the reticulated python, but also the previous record holder known from the Eocene of Egypt, Gigantophis garstini. Thus, with its incredible size, Titanoboa became the new record holder at least for a while. In 2024, with a description of a new madzoid, a snake that even surpassed Titanoboa was discovered. This was Vasuki indicus. So the new record holder became Vasuki indicus. By the way, in my next video, I will talk about Vasuki indicus. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel to stay informed. Anyway, for now, let's pretend we don't know this information and assume Titanoboa is still the largest snake. Let's admit it, the idea of a one-ton creature slithering on the ground is truly bone-chilling. But here lies a deeper mystery that gets to the heart of why Titanoboa was so extraordinary. Why was this prehistoric snake so much larger than any living species today? What changed? The answer is tied to something most people never think about when it comes to snakes: temperature. Snakes are ectotherms. They cannot regulate their own body temperature through internal metabolism the way mammals and birds do. They rely entirely on environmental conditions to maintain the warmth necessary for survival. And that fundamental constraint shapes almost everything about them: their metabolism, their growth rates, even the upper limit of their possible size. Think about it this way: the warmer the environment, the faster a snake's metabolism operates. Faster metabolism translates to faster growth, more efficient digestion, and the physiological capacity to sustain a much larger body mass. It's not just that warmth helps snakes, it's that warmth defines what's biologically possible for them. Head and his colleagues also examined the true reason for Titanoboa's size in light of this information. According to the research, as a poikilothermic ectotherm, Titanoboa's internal temperature and metabolism were largely dependent on ambient temperature, which also affected the animal's size. Accordingly, Large ectothermic animals are typically found in the tropics, and their size decreases with distance from the equator. Following this relationship, the researchers proposed that the mean annual temperature could be calculated by comparing the maximum body size of poikilothermic animals found in two regions. Based on the relationship between temperatures in the modern neotropics and the maximum length of anacondas, Head and his colleagues calculated a mean annual temperature of at least 32 to 33 degrees Celsius for the equatorial region of Paleocene South America. So this meant the ideal annual temperature for Titanoboa to live was 90 to 91 degrees Fahrenheit. In contrast, today's equatorial region has an average annual temperature of around 25 to 30 degrees Celsius. This means, due to the annual temperature, snakes had to become smaller. Consequently, for Titanoboa, there were only two inevitable options ahead. Either they had evolved or they failed to adapt to the climatic conditions and became extinct. And I can say that when scientists uncovered Titanoboa, they weren't merely looking at a giant predator. They were reading a climate record, a biological thermometer from 60 million years ago, and it pointed to a world far hotter than anything we experience today. This realization transformed Titanoboa from a paleontological curiosity into a window on an alien Earth, an Earth so warm that it allowed reptilian gigantism on a scale that modern ecosystems simply cannot support. Step back approximately 58 million years into the Paleocene epoch, just a few million years after dinosaurs vanished from the planet. Earth is recovering, ecosystems are rebuilding from scratch, and the tropics are transforming into something almost unrecognizable to modern eyes. Global temperatures were dramatically higher than today. In what is now northern Colombia, estimates suggest average year-round temperatures of at least 32 degrees Celsius, roughly 90 degrees Fahrenheit, with virtually no seasonal variation. Imagine a rainforest that never cools down. Not at night, not during any season, just relentless, steaming heat stretching from pole to pole. No ice caps, no winters, no temperature relief anywhere on the planet. Forests sweated, waterways steamed under the sun, and life grew large. For cold-blooded animals, warmth removes the biggest constraint on size. Modern tropical forests, the Amazon, the Congo, Southeast Asia, these are actually too cool for a snake like Titanoboa to exist. Current anacondas and pythons press against the upper limits of what our present climate allows. To push beyond their size into Titanoboa territory requires a world turned up several degrees warmer, consistently, for millions of years. Titanoboa couldn't survive in our modern world. Its massive body required that hothouse environment to kickstart the metabolism necessary to pump blood through 50 feet of coiled muscle. The physics simply don't work at modern temperatures. The Cerrejón site reveals this world in extraordinary detail. Layer after layer contains plant fossils indicating lush, humid conditions. Giant turtle shells, some the size of pool tables, suggest abundant prey. Early crocodilian relatives with blunt, crushing teeth indicate they fed on hard-shelled animals rather than acting as sleek river hunters. This wasn't a clear, fast-flowing river system. It was a humid swamp rainforest. Murky, slow-moving water threading through tangled roots and dense vegetation. Visibility would have been poor. Sounds muffled by constant rain and buzzing insects. Everything hot, everything wet, everything enormous. In such an environment, size became a tremendous advantage. A giant snake could lurk in the water, its bulk supported by buoyancy, its body concealed by tannin-stained currents. Heat and humidity kept muscles warm and ready, allowing explosive movement when necessary, followed by weeks or months of digestion between meals. Titanoboa in this context isn't an accident. It's a direct, logical outcome of an extreme world. High temperatures, abundant prey, and a swampy labyrinth. Perfect for slow, patient ambush hunting. So how did Titanoboa behave, and how did it hunt? Initially, considering Titanoboa's size and environment, it was thought to have behaved like a modern anaconda, and researchers suggested it may have fed on the local crocodile-like fauna. In the 2013 summary, Head and his colleagues noted that the snake's skull showed numerous adaptations for a piscivorous diet, including palatal anatomy, tooth count, and tooth anatomy. These adaptations are not seen in other boids, but are very similar to adaptations in modern canophidian snakes that have fish-eating diets. And I must say that. Forget everything you've seen in movies about giant snakes. Titanoboa wasn't some hyper-aggressive monster chasing prey across land. It wasn't a tree-dwelling boa or a land-racing python. Titanoboa was simply too massive for that lifestyle. 40+ feet of muscle doesn't glide quickly over forest floors. It sinks, it drags, it fights gravity with every movement. But in water, physics changes everything. In the Paleocene swamps, Titanoboa behaved less like a modern snake and more like a crocodile. Slow, silent, half submerged. It used murky water as camouflage, slipping between fallen logs and root systems with only the faintest surface disturbance. For an animal this size, invisibility wasn't a trick. It was a necessity. It didn't chase, it didn't sprint. It waited hours, maybe days, almost motionless until something wandered within striking range. And when it struck, the force was absolutely terrifying. Biomechanical models estimate Titanoboa could exert well over 400 pounds per square inches of constriction pressure. For perspective, that's more than enough to instantly crush a crocodile's ribs. Modern boas and pythons rely primarily on blood flow restriction to subdue prey, gradually suffocating victims through sustained pressure. But at Titanoboa's scale, the distinction barely matters. The result was always the same. Whatever got wrapped up wasn't escaping. Based on the ecosystem preserved at Cerrejón, Titanoboa's diet likely included giant turtles, slow-moving, abundant, and packed with calories. Early crocodilians, smaller than Titanoboa and not yet evolved into the apex predators they would later become. Large fish, common in the river systems and easy to catch in confined channels. Possibly early mammals, though mammals remained relatively small during the Paleocene. Any that ventured too close to the water's edge would have become prey. Water wasn't just a hunting ground, it was Titanoboa's lifeline. Buoyancy supported its massive weight. Without water, movement on land would have been exhausting, perhaps impossible for extended periods. Internal organs would compress under the animal's own body mass, making breathing difficult and digestion sluggish. Perhaps most importantly, water helped regulate body temperature. Snakes absorb heat from surroundings. In the sweltering Paleocene climate, water provided a way to cool down when necessary, while maintaining the high metabolic rate required to sustain such enormous size. So when you imagine Titanoboa, don't picture it slithering across land like a nightmare serpent from mythology. Picture it gliding silently through dark water, eyes barely above the surface, perfectly still waiting for the perfect moment to strike. If Titanoboa was such a successful predator, perfectly adapted to its environment and without natural enemies, why isn't it still around? The answer is both simple and tragic. The world changed, and Titanoboa couldn't adapt. After the Paleocene epoch, Earth began cooling. Gradually at first, then more rapidly. Average global temperatures dropped by several degrees Celsius over a few million years. For an ectothermic giant like Titanoboa, that shift was a death sentence. Here's the fundamental problem with being cold-blooded. Your metabolism ties directly to environmental temperature. When conditions cool, metabolism slows. Digestion takes longer. Movement becomes sluggish. Growth rates plummet. For a creature as large as Titanoboa, this was catastrophic. It required enormous amounts of food just to maintain body mass. But with a slower metabolism, hunting became less effective. Prey couldn't be digested quickly enough. Growth to competitive size became impossible. Essentially, Titanoboa starved in slow motion. But temperature wasn't the only problem. The entire ecosystem was transforming. Mammals, which had been relatively small and ecologically insignificant during the dinosaur age, were diversifying and growing larger. They were warm-blooded, which meant they remained active even as temperatures dropped. And they competed for the same resources that giant reptiles depended on. Meanwhile, the lush, swampy rainforests of the Paleocene were drying out. River systems became more seasonal. Dense, humid environments that Titanoboa thrived in were disappearing. And perhaps most critically, other large reptiles were dying out. Giant turtles, massive crocodilians, the entire food web supporting Titanoboa was collapsing. Titanoboa died not from predation, not from disease, not from competition with another apex predator. It died because the planet cooled by just a few degrees. That's all it took. A small shift in global climate, and the largest snake that ever lived simply stopped existing. And that should make us think. Because climate doesn't just shape ecosystems. It defines the upper and lower limits of what life is even possible. Titanoboa was a creature that should never have existed. Too big, too heavy, too dependent on conditions that were always destined to change. But for a brief moment in Earth's history, approximately 10 million years, all the conditions aligned perfectly. Extreme heat, abundant prey, swampy habitat, and for those fleeting millions of years, the largest snake that ever lived ruled the waterways of ancient Colombia. And then, just as quickly as it appeared, it vanished, leaving behind only fossils, questions, and a profound reminder that the planet we live on today is just one version of many that Earth has experienced. A version that happens to be too cold for 50-foot snakes. Thank you for watching. As a tribute to the revered memory of Titanoboa, let me know you made it to this point in the video by leaving a snake emoji in the comments. You can support me by subscribing to my channel. See you soon.